It's a good one today, y'all. Uh, I wanted to just talk briefly about Anthony Bourdain and the fact that he killed himself today. Um, you know, I don't know. I don't know how many people actually watched any of his shows. I don't know if you're a fan, but I think that there's a lot to be said about about mental health, mental illness, and what it means to live a life that you can feel good about. And I think it's incredibly sad that Anthony killed himself. Um, you know, I've read a few articles about him, and I've read some of his like interviews. And one of the things he said uh, in a recent interview was that he had a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and he said that he'd hurt and upset and and probably mistreated a lot of people. And I don't know, what that means or what actually happened, but I do know that you know, thinking about this type of situation, it's just so interesting how you can hold two conflicting thoughts and opinions and views of yourself at the same time. On the one hand, you look at Anthony, and what is he? He's a world famous chef and a best-selling author and an Emmy-winning television host. He's won every award, in his industry you could possibly win. And he's rich and famous. And he's a jiu-jitsu champion. He was a jiu-jitsu guy, blue belt. He won a tournament a few years back. And he has all these good things going for him. And on the one hand, I'm sure that gave him immense pride, and I'm sure that he loved that aspect of his life. But on the other hand, you know, there were obviously things that deeply, deeply troubled him. And this is something that we must come to realize. And the first thing is, it should go without saying, but it's worth repeating that money is not enough to keep you happy and sane. You can have all the resources in the world, you can have, all the success and all the accolades and still feel lost and scared and angry and shameful and hurt. And there's no direct correlation between those types of material outside indicators and your true happiness. Another thing is, it's entirely possible to hold conflicting beliefs about yourself. You can on the one hand know that you love yourself, and on the other hand, you know, have things that you hate about yourself and want to leave. And I saw in his interviews that he was like just deeply human, deeply human. Um, and it just reminds me how real. Oh, passing by here. It just reminds me how real the conversation around mental health needs to be. We're still so ashamed of talking about mental health. We're still so ashamed of talking about the fact that we're not doing well. We're not feeling well. And I don't know why. I don't know why this is still like a cultural stigma for us. Sometimes I'll hear people talk about depression, and I'll hear them say things like, oh, well, you just have to be mentally stronger. You just have to think more positively. You just have to, you know, um, get over it. And it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with being mentally strong or weak. It has nothing to do with being able to just get over something. And it has everything to do with you taking care of yourself. And what's up, Crystal? With you taking care of yourself and you supporting others and being supported by others. Um, so many of us are going through just deep, deep. Can I zoom in? I can zoom in on this. So many of us are going through deep, deep struggles that we don't talk about because we're scared of being judged. On the other hand, so many of us have judged others who have gone through those mental battles, who have suffered through mental illnesses. And the reason why we judge others is really because we're judging ourselves. If you've ever judged someone who's going through depression or anxiety or some sort of just mental illness, it's really because we're scared to look in the mirror, you know? It's because we're scared to look in the mirror and acknowledge the fact that like humans aren't perfect and it's not easy to just always think your way out of a situation. Yeah, positive thoughts, positive mentality, but it's more than that. It's caring for your soul, it's caring for your soul. And it's not always easy. And that's why we need each other. And Crystal, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that you lost your mom. Someone someone asked, and I think it was Brandon asked, do I think that social media leads to more depression amongst millennials? And I absolutely think so. I think that part of the depression comes from feeling like we're being compared to everyone else and yet we're still alone. And I think you just need to know that like the things that you're scared to talk about and the things that you feel in your heart are the things that others feel too, and we're often so scared to talk about. And if you're feeling something that is very deep and upsetting, chances are, because that emotion is so human, because it's so natural and normal to feel those depths, if anything, that makes you real. That makes that validates the fact that others are feeling that too. If you can feel something at that depth, others can too. And so it's totally okay and it's totally appropriate and it's totally necessary to reach out to others when you're struggling. There's no sense in being in this game alone. We have to be able to lean on each other. On the other hand, you might have others close to you who are depressed and who are feeling this sadness, who are feeling the pull. And you have to know as a supporter, so going from someone who needs to be supported to being a supporter, you have to know that as a supporter, yes, it's your role to support those you care about, to support your loved ones, to support your family as they go through their trials in life. But at the same time, they're not your responsibility. We come into this world as individuals and we leave as individuals. And although we're going to be involved with friends and loved ones and relationships throughout our lives, at the end of the day, your path is your own. And if someone chooses to take their life, that can never be your fault. Do you understand that? That can never be your burden to bear. So while we do share a responsibility to care for those that we love and to support them and to help them, ultimately that decision is their own. And you can't judge yourself for the decisions that others make for themselves. Does that make sense? You can't allow what happens to others to bring you down in a way where then you can't be supportive. We have to learn to just to put things in perspective. And so it's difficult. I wish there's something I could say that would make it easier to go through this stuff, But one thing you should realize about depression and especially suicide is that when you leave, if you choose to leave, it's not just you who's leaving. And it's not just you who's being affected, it trickles down. It's a domino effect. Think about all the family and the friends who won't have Anthony in their lives now. And think about his wife and think about his daughter and think about the friends who are used to seeing him around the holidays and who are used to spending time with him on the phone and talking to him, and the people whose lives that he used to be a part of and the people whose lives he used to light up. And think about, in his work, all the people in his community who, well, I mean, to be frank, were depending on him for a job. Now their job's over. Think about the effect of, in a few years when his memory is past, but those who are close to him are still holding on to that. And the fact that they'll have to now go through depression as well, perhaps, because they're dealing with that, they're processing that. And think about how they'll pass that on to their kids. When someone commits suicide, it does create a bit of a stigma where it's like, oh, you're the person whose dad killed themselves. Oh, you're the person whose wife or husband killed themselves. That creates a stigma and it creates an effect. It's not just in a vacuum. And so you have to acknowledge the fact that although we do come into this world connected, or we do come into this world independently, we are connected. And it's extremely selfish to take your life. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the decision and the choice. You can do that. It's an option for you because it's no one's responsibility but your own. But it is selfish and it has a huge ripple effect. And think about the people who you'll never get to impact, the ones whose lives you could have helped, the ones whose lives you could have changed. And when you're gone, it leaves a vacuum. It leaves a gap. And there is a gap in time. There's a gap in time and space where because you're not there, you can't make those changes. You can't help those people. You can't do those things. And maybe it's not a big deal to you now, but I guarantee you the people that you couldn't be with, those who you couldn't hold space for, will be affected even if they don't know it. It's difficult. It's wasted potential. I mean, and the thing is, Anthony lived up to his potential. There was a lot of potential that he actualized, but there was more. There was more, and it's just a shame. It's just a shame. So I wish him love and respect. I wish his family love and respect. It's not easy. One thing I'll say is that life always comes in cycles, waves. You look at the ocean and life is the same way. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. And what I'll encourage you to do is to not make a decision when you're in a low place. We've all been in a low place before. And you're never going to make a decision that supports you and others. You're never going to make a decision that nourishes you and others. You never make a decision that will be of your best self when you're in a low place. And if you're in that low place, sometimes the best thing is to not make a decision and to just hold off, on making those decisions. You can always do something about it another day. It doesn't need to be finalized and resolved now. There's always another life to be lived on the other side of pain. Someone asked, what's your opinion on using psychedelics in depression in therapy? And, I haven't used them in a traditional therapeutic processes, but I have used them, and my guess is, and my hope is that they'll continue to be used as tools and as medicines for these illnesses. I know that MDMA is being used a lot in psychotherapy research, and depression had some really positive effects. So I hope that it continues to get the press and the coverage it deserves, so they can get more funding and more people can be aware of it. But yeah, I just want to leave you with that. Don't make your decisions from a low place, because we're all going to go through these low places, and you have to learn how to operate from a position of strength. And if you can't get there, to learn how to cultivate that and build that. Anthony Bourdain was a person who seemed like he had it all together, who seemed like he had figured everything out, who seemed like he understood nature and the world. And like I said, he had money and he had fame and he had things that everyone else wanted, and yet he wasn't happy. And so what does that tell us? What does it tell us about the true nature of happiness? What does it tell us about, what it takes to live a fulfilled life? We look at Kate Spade. Kate Spade recently committed suicide, and Kate Spade was a mogul. She was a legend in the making, or not a legend in the making, a legend of the industry. She is a designer. She's a visionary. She might have been close to a billionaire. Who knows? She's quite wealthy. She had it all figured out, and yet it wasn't enough. And so it makes us think, what is the true source of happiness? It can't be the material possessions. It can't be the fame. It can't be just the accolades. Because if it were, then there wouldn't be such a strong correlation between people who seem to have it all, but then want to give it all away, want to stop it. Seems to me like people who are in positions of power, those who have a lot of money or resources, often have other things that they're dealing with that affect them and that really that really weigh on them. And so we have to know that, when we're striving for these things, and it's perfectly okay to strive for those things. When we're striving for those things, that we can get them and they can make us happy, but it's not the same thing as happiness. Yeah, like that literally lawnmower was flying around this neighborhood chasing me. And this is the last point I want to bring up. You know, pleasure is not the same thing as happiness. And a lot of us are seeking pleasure. We're seeking moments of titillation. We're seeking moments of we're seeking moments of brief joy wrapped in materialism and wrapped in, momentary spasms of love and lust and hype. But true happiness is not the same thing as pleasure. And you can feel pleasure from happiness, but happiness itself is a state of being. And it's something that's cultivated over years of you working on yourself. You know, it's it's culminated in years of developing yourself and learning and not forcing yourself to suffer through things, apologizing to those who you've hurt, doing the deep work. You know, it's it's more than just a fleeting feeling. It's a way of being. It's a way of living. You know, and just know that if you're not feeling the happiness and you're not feeling the joy, that just as easily as you feel like you've lost that joy, you can regain it. And it's not as easy as just saying it. I know that it takes more than just wishing yourself happy. But just know that if you're suffering inside, spiritually and intellectually and mentally, as deep as your pain is, that's how deep your joy can be as well. You know? Because remember that the same mind of Anthony Bourdain is the same one that allowed him to take his life, also had the power to heal him. You understand? Like, as deep as the depth of your unhappiness is, that's how high the peak of your happiness can be as well. And so we have to allow ourselves to find the tools necessary to be able to become happy. Because again, it's not just about you being happy, it's about the fact that we are connected to each other. And us creating the scenarios where we commit suicide because we're so wrapped up in our own minds and our own heads and our own imagination affects people in a deep, deep way. And I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that his daughter has to go through this long, long journey of, of pain and recovery. And, from the macro perspective, it's just the way life is. I know it sounds cold and heartless, but it's just the way life is. And this is going to be part of her journey now. This will be part of what defines her and part of what defines his wife and part of what defines their friend circle. This will leave an impact and it will shape the decisions and the feelings and the thoughts these people have and make about themselves. It doesn't have to be their entire story, but it will shape them. And you have to think about the impact you're having on others. And so again, while you are an independent individual being that's free to make decisions of your own and you're capable, and at the end you will leave solo as a sole entity, you're connected to each other. And it's important that we consider that before we make these decisions. And so depression is real, folks, and we should be talking about this more and more and more because it's so important that we don't stigmatize it. It's so important that we don't treat it frivolously. If you're feeling like this, reach out to someone, please. Friends, family members, loved ones. And if you see someone suffering, obviously reach out to them. But outside of just reaching out to people who you think might need the help, make sure that you keep those to you close. The ones that you really love and care about, make sure that you're making an active effort to remain in their lives because you never know what people are going through. And you never know when you can be that person to provide a small amount of support, a small amount of push, a nudge to get someone back from the brink and the depths of hurt and pain over to just holding on to where they can get the ground back under them. This is so important. You never know who you're helping just by caring for them and just by paying attention to them. And you don't have to baby them. You don't have to treat them like like sick children or basket cases, just to be there to support them, just to make an effort to support those that you care about, sometimes is enough to keep people from doing things that you have no idea they're planning on doing. And remember that if someone commits suicide, man, it's not the first time they thought about it. If someone commits suicide, they probably either tried it multiple times or they've attempted it multiple times, or they've either thought about it multiple times or attempted it multiple times. If someone commits suicide, it's not the first time it's crossed their mind. You look at someone like Robin Williams. Robin Williams was one of the supposedly happiest people on earth. Brilliant comedian, mega wealthy, one of the most talented people of our generation, and yet he killed himself. He hung himself. Why would someone in his position do that? A lot of times, like someone noted, the happiest people are the ones that are hiding the deepest secrets and are hiding the deepest pains. A lot of comedians are like that as well. A lot of people who are funny and bring light and levity do that because they're dealing with the pain of things that have hurt them in the past, and they use humor and they use their gifts to hide their pain. And so even those around you that you feel like have it all together, those are the ones you should be checking up on too. You know, those are the ones that you should be checking in on. I have friends who are going through some deep shit right now. And on the outside, you would think that they had it all together, that they had it all figured out, that they were going to be successful, that they're bound to be happy, that they're bound to be rich, that they're bound to be wealthy and in good relationships, and they're struggling and they're drowning. And those are the ones I know of. And there are tons that I don't even know of. And that's why I always make an effort, you know. And I'm not perfect at this, and I don't put it all on me, but I always make an effort to talk to those I love and to keep up with people and to just be in their lives. It's so important, you know. And we don't ever want to be in a situation where we regret not connecting with someone, where we regret, you know, not being with someone, or we regret not checking up on someone that we care about because we don't know how long they have. You know, we don't know. So much love to you, Mr. Bourdain. You were a jiu-jitsu champion, a blue belt. 2015, he won the Masters Championship at the New York Jiu-Jitsu Pro. You were a savage visionary. You were someone who expanded the world's palate. You wrote incredible books. You shot some of my favorite documentaries. You opened my mind to art and culture through the lens of cuisine. I loved your work. I was inspired by your vision. And it hurts me that you're gone. And it hurts me that that you felt like your gifts weren't enough. And it hurts me that you were dealing with whatever shame you were dealing with, because human shame is part of this equation. And I wish you peace, and I wish your family peace. And for anyone who's dealing with this, you know, if you're watching this right now and you're still watching this, leave a comment below. Leave a comment below if you're going to support someone today. Leave a comment below if you're going to support someone who you care about. Just put, I will be there. Just put in the comments, I will be there. Because it's our responsibility to be there for others. Not that it's our responsibility to save their life, but it's our responsibility to be there, you know? And it is scary that he was so loved and yet no one could help him. But it doesn't mean that we don't try as humans. It doesn't mean that we don't commit to being there for those we care about. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Let's make this a good weekend. Let's make this a weekend of care for others. Let's make this a weekend of love for those that need our support. I will be there. Have a good day, guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you. You reach out if you need me. All right? Peace.